So in Illustrator, we've kind of talked about the basic drawing tools, like working with the pen, working with various geometric primitives. Those were all, I think, well explored in that last assignment, but I'll throw a couple of other ones at you here. Some that might be really useful for doing certain graphic kind of screen printy / repetitive things. So this geometric thing back here was done with the blend tool. And I know I showed that, but let me revisit that real quick. Making a shape and another shape and doing either a fixed number of sort of steps in between or an even blend of those is something that this tool's sort of designed to do. So I'll just replicate what I did. So a line, and I'll go to my properties tab and get that a little fatter so we can see it. And I'm just going to copy it and paste it. It wouldn't have to be the same shape, but for my sort of thing that I was doing, it made sense to replicate it. You've got an A and a B, between which there's going to be a blend using this tool. And the blend tool is this little guy here, shows a square turning into a circle, which is highly indicative of what it can do. Clicking between one and the other will give you an instant result, but if there's something about that you don't like, you can go to the commands for that tool. And I don't know, we probably didn't say it, but for all of these tools, if there's a parameter that needs changing, double clicking on it won't change the one that you've made, but it will change everything subsequently. So for example, on this one, if I say specified steps and say 15 steps and do the same thing, oh, it is updating. So that's cool. Likewise, if we were to change one of these lines, it'll update accordingly. So that's cool. And I would guess that if I were to Shift-C this guy and turn it into a curve, we'd see that happening too. And I wonder what happens if we grab that. Yeah. So you get some pretty interesting things going there. The obvious thing is you're basically making a morph between two different shapes. I could see this as a way to get to a shape that you don't want to draw. Like, what is the difference between a star and a circle? I don't really know what that is, but I want the software to find that for me. And you could conceivably make that happen. I'll just do the blend here. Maybe we probably only have room for about 4 steps or so here. And in each case, you're going to click on the first shape and click on the second shape with the tool selected. So making sure it's deselected. Go from number 1 to number 2, and there it is. And I guess the third to the last one is one of those scoop chips with the, it's like the Doritos. So that's a thing, and I think that works really good for this kind of geometric thing that you don't want to do a lot of hassle with. We haven't talked about type being something that you can manipulate more than just in a straightaway. This was not done on a path. I did this manually just because of what you'll see here. But to draw a piece of text that follows a line is amazingly easy. So one would start by having that line. So let's just make a curve here. And it doesn't matter what it looks like, because when we put type on that path, it will disappear. So material-wise, whether it's a line or a fill or it's a color that you don't want, you're really just indicating where the software is going to put that text. Underneath the regular type tool is the type on a path tool. There's a couple of them. There's vertical type on a path and type on a path. There's also a vertical type tool, just as you can imagine. It's going to give you a stack of type. But upon clicking on this, you can see that it's given me my placement text. There, I'll make it a little bigger for folks. And at any point, all of this is manipulated. So you can change the curve until you get what you like. You can change the text and fill it with the information that you want, and so on. So what I had done there was hello with lots of O's and some exclamation points. If I change that size, we might see some things happening we don't want it to do. This font is actually pretty good. But the decorative font that I did had a slightly different result. And you'll find that that's true of downloaded fonts. My Russian one here. It's actually pretty good so far. I think we're going to run into some problems as it hits the, So you can see as it starts to hit the curve there, it's really having trouble managing the collision of things. So maybe it's a case of I design my curve a little bit better and get the same effect. But I liked being able to pick those up manually and get them to fit in a way that you would if you were doing it by hand. So I did it by hand and just converted it to outlines and then picked up individual points and started moving them around. I think in that case too, I did a little bit of, what do they call it? There's a transform on here. All right, so let me show you how to manipulate this from scratch. Normally, you type out your message and maybe you're satisfied with it, but maybe we want to alter what that typeface looks like a little bit, alter its placement in a way that the type tool doesn't allow us to do. There's a lot of stuff we can do with just working the type tools themselves. The kerning, the leading. Kerning is the space between letters. Leading is the space between lines. Something like this, if we wanted to bump those two letters closer together, this is a shortcut that you'll want for all Adobe stuff. Drop your cursor down anywhere. Like I'm going to get the U and the M closer together. Hold down the Option key, and then using the arrow key, you can start to move it in or out. So if you are using these free downloaded fonts, you'll probably find that a lot of them just need a little help in the kerning department. You know, and I think I went too far in a couple places. The other way to do that is to convert it all to outlines. And the shortcut for that is Shift-Command-O. And I have to try to remember where that is. There we go, Create Outlines. So under Type, Create Outlines. And what that does is turn it into artwork. Each one of those points is now something that we can pick up and move around. So in my case, when I did my O's, let's just do that, guys. Convert to outlines. Was to just pick those things up and move them until I saw what I liked like that. So I could get very picky and get specific about the way that went around, which I think sort of lent itself to that, gave it a little bit more of the handcrafted look, which is important. Okay, we did say that directional lighting is something that you want to try to incorporate in your graphics in some way. To do so, in my case, was a case of layering all of these little pieces. So if you can see that that's just a piece in and of itself. It was really drawn sort of paint by numbers style so that those pieces are separate. It requires a certain amount of kind of design planning. But not unlike what you guys are doing for those 30 icons, right? So a case of, if it's bigger than the object, it's the biggest thing on the object, send it all the way to the back. If it's a highlight, send it all the way to the front and keep it on just one side. So it becomes kind of a layer management challenge. And I know that we've talked about this, but you can see how nasty this started to get. I did a lot of sort of casual grouping, and what happened was that I would end up with like an eye as a group, right? So there's an eye. And if I wanted to get something into that eye group, it became a case of I drew it up here somewhere and somehow had to get it down into here. I think it was like this, yeah, this little eye shadow there was something that was really hard to get into that set at the right level. So twirling these down gets you access to all of that information if you're somebody who habitually groups like I apparently did. So that's something to watch out for. I'm going to add a wrinkle to this, which we are used to seeing in Photoshop, but we don't necessarily think of it so far in Illustrator, which is the transparency on objects. Classically, you would see transparency as part of the things in that layer palette, but it's actually in a little bit of a weird space in terms of that mode of thinking. It's related to the object itself, and it's a palette rather than a commonly used tool. So let's put a swatch of color across them, and I'm going to just grab this color. By the way, whenever you select a color with your selection tools, the next thing you draw will use the exact same relationship of thickness of line, fill, and stroke. So if I wanted another of something, just grab one, then hit the pen tool and start making your new thing. And there's my next bit of red ready to go. So let's say we wanted to add a discoloration kind of thing across them like this. Not that this is what I want, but it's kind of interesting. So right now it's completely opaque, and that's normal for this program. We're going to do individual transparencies and modes by opening. It is okay, I do have it open, but it's lost in the stack there somewhere. The window transparency. And there it is. So we've got our modes. Not all of them, not all of the photo capable ones that we saw in Photoshop are there. And then your opacity. So you may just find that dialing something like that down gives you a nice kind of printed look. I might try something like an overlay mode to see what that does. That's kind of neat. So I can check these different modes to get that printerly kind of layers on top of layers look that might be right for this kind of thing. To that end, let's try a little something here. So I've got this brown as kind of a background, but I could put it on the front of everything and set it to a mode instead, which might give us a real antique look to everything real quick. So I can transform this and send it up to the front. Probably the easiest way for me to do that is to select it and get it on its own layer. So I'm going to just cut it and put it on a new layer. Make sure that layer is up on top. Paste them on down. Luckily, because of the way I'm viewing it, it's pasting it right on top. Do you want me to get into the habit of copy pasting and then finding that it kind of threw it in some place you didn't want it? I think it puts it in the middle of the document. So I'm sort of cheating here by having pre-centered it and then viewing it the way I'm viewing it. So you may find that I make a little detail, I paste it and it's way off somewhere and you got to go seek it out. That just sucks and doesn't make a lot of sense. But I do believe that if you paste something and kind of lose it, if you hit the Z for zoom tool and then click anywhere, it will highlight the thing that you selected. Pretty sure. Okay, so now maybe doing a multiply or darken or something on here might give us a little different look. So now all of those colors have incorporated some of that other stuff. So yes, so this is what Maddie was trying to do. She's kind of copying a piece of a photograph of a guy and kind of following it literally, like here's this color on the guy, here's that color on the guy, but it doesn't yet have the scheme, the sort of constructivist scheme on it yet. This would be a way to kind of incorporate that real quick. So if I switch this to like a red, suddenly Dwayne is going to go red here too. Obviously, that doesn't work completely, but works on him in kind of a strong graphic way. So that's a maybe. There is also sort of a masking thing that goes on here, which is a little bit like our layer mask in Photoshop. One way that I see this used a lot is to like incorporate a texture or a grunge texture to something. If you want to make it look like a t-shirt that's been, the paint is coming off of it or whatever. And in that case, you're going to use this little slot right here, paste some kind of black and white information into there, and that'll actually cut out that layer. So an example might be, I think I've got one. Let's see if I can make this work. I'm placing my grunge here. This is kind of low res. Oh, it's really low res. Let me do that. Let me do that again, just in case I screwed up in placing it. Okay, so I still have, it's working. It's actually in my mask. I don't want to be in my mask yet. Let's just double click out of that and place it again. So that's if you want to put it directly in the mask. I believe that in order for the mask to work, it has to be vector also. How can I convert this rapidly into a vector image? Image trace, Mike. You're right, image trace would do it. So black and white, probably. Let's do a little preview and see what we get. Okay, kind of low quality. So we would want to tweak the threshold to get a little bit more image back, tweak the paths to be a little bit more detail, something like that, and maybe I wonder what happens if we increase the noise. Looks like birds, lots of birds. Okay, so maybe we like that. I think if I had found a higher resolution piece, that would probably be better. I will then, this is, if you forgot the step in tracing, expand is necessary to get it out of being just a graphic and being vector here. I can also make sure that when I'm tracing to ignore white, that's a maybe. Might want to do that, expand. So now these are all just little pieces here. So I could cut that out. Let's try and add the grunge to this layer. So bring up my transparency again. Selecting my mask, I'm going to paste it into the mask. And I'm going to cheat and sort of stretch it to fit. See what we get. I can see it working. See the black parts are kind of chewed away there. So I don't think that's right for us, but it's kind of cool. You know what would be interesting? I wonder what would happen if we were to take that layer, select it, and do our see if this does a bunch of rounds on it or not. Well, it's making it interesting, but it's not making it better. Actually, now they look like little land masses. So if you wanted to make a really fast D&D map, I think that's the way to get one of those. Okay, so there's a couple things: the masks, the overlays, transparency, and type on a path, and the blend tool. A couple more weapons in your arsenal. Anybody want to see a bit of that again, or have a specific question they want clarified from last time, maybe?